Hi, my name is Amanda. I know you will think that I'm complaining about first world problems, but believe me, it's nothing like that. My parents are so cruel. They are super rich and yet refuse to give me even a dime. You see, growing up, I knew my mom and dad were wealthy, but they didn't let me know the real extent of it. My parents had founded a multi-million-dollar business before I was even born and then bought more and more companies. They were swimming in money, and they had so many properties I didn't even know about when I was a kid. When I was a kid, my parents bought me everything I wanted, and even more. I was a bit spoiled, sure, but most of the things they got for me, I didn't even ask for. They would arrive home with lots of gifts, and my closet was always filled with new clothes. They would also take me on lavish vacations to these incredible places. Honestly, I couldn't even pronounce the names of some of those countries back then. Still, I loved traveling all around the world, and I had so much fun with my mom and dad, going on all kinds of amazing adventures. Things started to change, though, when I entered puberty. Every year, they would buy me fewer and fewer things. They'd only give me something for my birthday and then a few spare clothes or stuff like that during the rest of the year. It was so odd, and I didn't understand it. They told me I needed to get a job. I didn't understand this since they had so much money and they could afford to let me have nice things. I just thought they were joking, but I was in for a big surprise. When I turned 15, I went shopping for new clothes and my card was actually declined. I was shocked since I hadn't spent much that month and my allowance was over $1,000 a week. I figured it was some kind of mistake, and so I checked my bank app. To my shock, all the money was gone. At first, I thought it was some kind of fraud and someone had stolen my money, but then I realized it had been transferred back to my parents' account. Imagine how mad I was. I couldn't believe mom and dad had done that to me, and without even letting me know beforehand. Did they really expect me to support myself as a teenager? I was just 15, and that wasn't fair at all. So I rushed back home and confronted my parents, screaming at them for what they did to me. I felt betrayed and humiliated and couldn't understand why they were being so cruel. Much to my surprise, they didn't apologize or even try to negotiate with me. They explained that I was completely cut off and that they weren't going to give me another cent. Mom said they wanted me to learn the value of money and that I needed to be self-reliant. I was floored. I replied that I was still too young to work, and even if I did get a part-time job, it wouldn't be enough to support myself. They didn't really care. They told me I would need to learn how important hard work was, and I would need to pay for everything. So if I wanted to eat dinner, I had to pay for it myself, and I'd also be taking care of my own bills. My clothes, my cell phone, my car, everything I wanted to have, I would have to pay for it myself. They took away my car and told me I'd have to make weekly payments on it to keep it, as well as pay for gas and any other expense. I even had to pay for the insurance. I was in tears by the time this conversation ended. They were being irrational. They didn't just expect me to pay for a few things and make an effort. They actually wanted me to be completely independent. Dad told me that he had come from nothing and built an empire from scratch, so now it was my turn to do the same. I told him he was insane and that I was just 15. I didn't think I was even old enough for anyone to employ me at all. My parents didn't even offer me a job at their company. They explained I needed to find my own way in life and that I would have to get a job all on my own. I was really freaking out and refused to talk to them after this. I've been looking for jobs, but no one is hiring someone as young as I am. My parents are being cheap for no good reason. It's like they actually want me to starve. I feel like they got tired of having a child and they want to get rid of me or something. Most nights, I end up having dinner at my friend's house since my mom and dad even expect me to pay for my own food. I'm so mad and disappointed in them that I don't even want to go back home at all. I'm turning 16 in a week and I plan on getting a job as soon as possible. I want nothing but to become independent and not rely on my parents another day. When I move out and go to college, I know I will never go back to their home. My parents and I haven't been talking a lot lately. In fact, I only reply to their questions with short answers and try to avoid them as much as possible. I can't believe my mom and dad could do something like this to me, and I'm still in shock that they could be so uncaring. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted more than anyone else in the world? Please let us know in the comments. I'd really appreciate some advice on how to deal with this situation. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.
I really think that my parents never wanted to have children. Growing up, I thought that my family wasn't very wealthy. If you knew my parents at all, you'd know how crazy that sounds. I lived in this beautiful grand house. I don't know if you could call it a mansion, but it came pretty close to being one. My parents drove amazing cars and changed them every single year. But being a kid, I couldn't understand how we could be rich while I was made to wear hand-me-down clothes. Everything I owned was incredibly cheap, you see. I'd get a single gift for Christmas, one you could easily get from a pound shop. And it was all I ever knew. It seemed normal to me, even if my parents never got those kind of gifts for themselves. Oh no, Mum and Dad would buy clothes, fancy clothes, and all kinds of jewellery for each other, and they'd do it right in front of me. At first, I honestly didn't see anything wrong with that. It seemed normal. After all, that's the way I was raised. Now, I want you to understand, this is not about them wanting to teach me a lesson about how nothing comes for free in life, and I have to work hard for everything I get. No matter what marks I got, no matter how well I behaved, nothing changed. They'd spend all their money on themselves and completely ignore me. If they would have at least been loving and kind to me, perhaps I could forgive them for everything they put me through. But they were always so self-centered and into their own needs that they seemed to forget that I even existed at times. As I grew up, I began wondering if they just had a child because it was what was expected of them. I'm honestly not sure if they ever really loved me, and that's a horrible realization for a young girl to have. When I became a teenager, I finally noticed just how much my parents had and how little they gave to me. They'd buy super expensive things for themselves all the time. You name it, they had it. Cars, clothes, rings, pets. It was all status symbols, you know? They flaunted their riches to the world. To them, appearances were so important, and they always looked their best when they stepped out the front door, but would always find an excuse to refuse my requests whenever I dared ask them for something. If they went on holiday, I had to stay at home with a nanny. If they went shopping, they told me I'd be able to tag along next time. They'd come back with handfuls of bags, and nothing was ever for me. How could they behave that way? I even tried to sit down with them and have a heart-to-heart talk with my mum, but she kept telling me how busy she was, and that I needed to understand I couldn't make demands. She was my mother, and she made the rules. That was that. Trying the same with my dad was even worse. He told me to set up a meeting with his secretary. I'm not even kidding you. Believe me, I didn't make that call. If he didn't want to speak to me, then I didn't want to speak to him either. So I focused on my studies and my friends instead. I got straight A's and won a maths competition at school, but my parents never once said they were proud of me. When I turned 17, I got my driving license and finally pleaded for a car of my own. Reluctantly, they ended up agreeing. But even though they drove the latest models and traded them in for new cars every year, I got a runaround car that would always have problems. It's not like I wanted a brand new and posh car, but at least one that didn't need to be taken to the shop every month or so. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful they fed and clothed me. And I know they weren't obligated to buy me any car at all, full stop. But I always felt like an outcast in my own home. And even when I tried to talk to them about it, they just kept up their ways. Finally, I graduated with honours and had to pick the colleges I'd applied to. That was when things got really nasty with my parents. They had more than enough money to pay for my tuition many times over, but they refused to invest on what they called an unnecessarily expensive education. So I gave up on asking them for anything at all and began applying for scholarships. Would you believe I got one for the college of my choice? I was so happy. I celebrated with my best friends and decided not to tell my parents about it at all. They didn't deserve to share this special moment with me. I moved away that summer and couldn't be happier. I just hated spending time with my parents so much, and though I call them from time to time because, well, they are still my mum and dad, they never really apologised for everything they did. I'm doing great now. In college, I found people who truly care about me. True friends I can count on. I'm still close with my high school friends and feel loved and cherished away from the negative influence my parents had on me. I stopped worrying about their money, getting a part-time job to pay for whatever necessities my scholarship doesn't cover. What I do know, though, is that if I ever have children of my own, I'll never make them feel ostracized in their very own home. So at least I learned that from my parents. It's not much, but I've learned to let go of my old grudges and just search for the silver lining in any bad situation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and check out the other stories on the channel and subscribe for more.